Hello and welcome to the show. Okay, so this week has been a very enlightening experience for me. Lots of old memories have been coming to the surface. It's been pretty fascinating. Things have been going through this week. So there's a certain level of privacy I wish to maintain simply because I've often felt uncomfortable sharing intimate details about my life with people because it hasn't always been met reciprocally. And I think that's something that I personally need to get over in the sake of volunteering information about myself to get to know other people, as well as understanding that people have no obligation to tell me information about themselves. To me, it feels it feels disingenuous when somebody's willing to share their life with you and communicate all these little details, but you're not willing to reciprocate to the same level of intimacy. And I understand that some people, and I understand people that I prefer my privacy. That's anybody who's met me or known me more than a minute can figure that quite simply. I like my privacy. I think that's a fundamental human right, and I think that is something that needs to be maintained in an increasingly invasive digital age. I've always been quite outspoken about the degree to which companies chase people's personal information. And the tricky part I find with that is there is definitely utility in what they're doing. There is absolute. There is definitely what's the word? Utility is a very unspecific word for what I want to say. I'll continue the thought and see what comes to mind afterwards. What I'm really wanting to talk about is the level of detail requested of people in a digital arena, a digital environment is weirdly excessive and yet incredibly useful because the amount of information that does get gathered about us from the various sources that gather data, most of the time that information is being put to increase the quality of user experience as well as provide better value of the user experience. And I think it's more than just asking for higher quality. I think it's very important to add higher value to that. And it's something I see in many of the algorithmic news feeds is once they identify you like one thing, they latch onto that and push that very deeply. And yet, whilst the quality of content can improve, the value doesn't necessarily go up with it. And I think that's a serious problem. I think there's a very serious issue that I think it's a very serious issue that quality and value are aren't commonly held as synonymous terms. I think for something to truly be high quality, it has to be very good value. So, for instance, one of my favorite automobile manufacturers, who I'm very aware also are aerospace engineers and defense contractors, Rolls Royce. I say that as a slight compensation in my head for the sake of one of my favorite music artists, well, my favorite artist, a gentleman called Loki, who very well pointed out on, I want to say his album Dear Listener, the track Hand on Your Gun, where he pointed out these weapons contractors that, you know, do what weapon contractors do, defense contractors, I should say. And the amount of information gathered about us by I've always described it as a media industrial complex, and that includes your social medias, it includes your broadcast networks, it includes your, Bollywoods, Hollywoods, Nollywoods. It includes all forms of entertainment, the media industrial complex. I think the data harvesting that goes on with that definitely enhances user experience. And the tricky part to it is by providing them that data, they can't unlearn that information. Despite the requests that can be made for it, the actual practical outcome of requesting your data be withdrawn from use is one, nigh impossible to achieve without a very, very well accomplished set of lawyers. And secondly, is such, which incurs a great deal of expense. And secondly, often puts, was there a safety check now? Because the amount of information that gets contained about us provides several categories of quality. I've always found that the value that they provide is from the perspective, well, you could argue it is an increasing value. To continue with the Rolls-Royce idea, it's that the vehicles they produce are designed with the intent of creating such a luxurious experience that you never want to travel in anything ever again. Which is kind of the idea of any car manufacturer. The difference is Rolls-Royce have committed to that component of their business model and have actually produced vehicles that once you've sat in, whether you're driving or being driven, you don't want to be in a different car, any other car. You only want to be in a Rolls Royce. And I think that's a testament to not just the quality they have, as well as the value associated with the quality. So I was watching a marketing series. Well, I was watching a series of marketing videos that were centered around a gentleman called Roy Sutherland, who was vice president of Ogilvy and is lauded as one of the greatest advertisers of all time. Given my relative novelty to the industry, I can only take them at their word. However, from hearing him speak and the fact that he is very widely lauded as one of the greatest advertisers of all time, he has the credentials, and there's several people that support that position without it being politically inclined. So anybody that can speak about advertising to such a degree, his point of it was that Rolls-Royce found that they sold more cars by instead of doing car shows, by bringing their cars to air shows and boat shows, because when you're spending 7 or 8 figures, 9 figures on the vehicle, spending the 6 figures, maybe 7 depending on how much you get customised, on the car, doesn't seem anywhere near as expensive. Meanwhile, if you're at a motor show and there's all these 5-figure cars around and a few 6-figure cars, your comparatively high-end 6-figure car is looked at as more unobtainable, despite the people who attend the shows very possibly being in the capable wealth bracket, to phrase it as directly as possible. So, with that in mind, it's quality and value. Because you can have terrific quality at terrible value. So, for instance, if you bought a car 10 times its actual market value because of what it means to you, you might have found exactly what you want. However, realistically, you've overpaid for something simply because you saw status in some way, shape or form. It typically is status. Pardon me. And I understand that's part of how the system works. And when I say the system, I refer to the societally acknowledged dominant hierarchy where you all participate in involuntarily simply by being born. In the same way in the animal kingdom, it doesn't matter if you're a carnivore, a herbivore, an omnivore, or anything else. Although I think those are all the only options. Although you could know what your planet is for something. I wonder if there are animals that could something. I wouldn't be surprised if there were. My point being, the value provided is much, much more significant than the quality. Because no matter how high the quality is, if you haven't got value for your item, you might have actually done yourself a disservice. So it's relative to your station, I guess might be the phrase. So, I mean, say for instance, train ticket to Scotland, right? When I visit my dad in Scotland, I prefer to take a train because I don't have to drive. It means I can do some reading, I can, study, train, write, get some work done, all that kind of thing. And if I spend basically twice as much to get the first class ticket, I mean, it's not that I'm going to get there any faster. I'm not going to have to I'm not going to take a different route. The difference is the journey is of a higher quality because I've got a comfier seat, I have more space, I have a bigger table with which to use that space, not just my personal space. I have a quieter cabin, and to be frank about it, a higher quality of compatriot sitting next to me. And I don't mean to be rude about that. I mean that in the sense of people that afford first class typically have an affluence which comes from participating communities which encourage calmness. Meanwhile, if you're in coach or economy or however you describe it, it's noisy and cramped, and the value I'm getting from that extra ticket is brilliant. The quality of it is terrific. I was paying, if a first class train ticket cost 10 times as much as the normal one, but there's a bit of paper stuck in the groove on the table here that just bothered me. No, I see what it was. It's a bit of tape I put there just yeah, value matters, and I think that far too many people get entrapped in this idea that pardon me, quality is value, when that's a false equivalency. No, it's fine. And I think that's an issue to do with inflation. So let's try and think about this economically. If you're determined to achieve quality without value, for instance using 73 highly multisyllabic words when you could use 23 dual triple syllable words, you're more likely to communicate a message that's easily interpretable by the listener, reader, whoever. And at the same time, if your audience is of a higher reading level, or higher education level, I should say, then perhaps you want to be more elaborate with your descriptions, and you want to use that thesaurus as absolutely thoroughly as possible. And I think that's a good example of quality versus value, because there is context to it. There's always context to whether you want to go with high quality or high value. And I will make a note for you today, viewers, that this is a much shorter episode than usual, simply because I started recording later than usual due to I was socialising earlier, and I went reasonably well. It definitely would have gone worse if I had been less mature about the situation. The point stands is, I was slightly upset by a friend, someone I considered a friend, and their attitude towards me, and I really don't think it's appropriate to be airing that sort of dirty laundry publicly when I can speak to them privately about it. It's unlikely I will unless it happens again. I just will, it's give them an opportunity to see if they corrected themselves. Although, oh my god, part of me is now considering, is it worth me going to my emotionals to communicate my feelings in a way that's actually probably fairly profitable, because let's be honest, part of the reason humans do anything is for a profit margin. And I do love this channel. I like making videos because I like being creative, I like chess, I like sharing my thoughts. I started them just as something fun because, podcasting, why not? It'd be kind of cool to be a pro podcaster. And, I mean, technically if I ever make $1 off of this, then I am a pro podcaster, which, it's another feather in the cap and something to work on. My point is, because my intentions with this podcast aren't primarily about being a professional podcaster, it's more a merging of me. I've named it my Sunday study section on the Twitch stream because it helps me think through thoughts. I think you can study for a topic without directly reading the material if you're examining whatever you're examining with the perspective of somebody from that profession. So in this instance, if I'm communicating in the sense of a marketing perspective, because for any new viewers, I'm studying consumer behavior marketing at the undergraduate level. And we could even, in this instance, the marketing perspective I'm looking at here is how I'm portraying myself to you as myself as a human being, as well as marketing chess to some degree. There's definitely part of me that is wanting to optimize my channel's marketability by associating my thought patterns with chess, because I enjoy chess. I think it's a great game. I think it's probably the best game ever. There's no disrespect to you Go players, I just don't know how to play Go. I mean, I'd learn to play Go if given the opportunity. I just don't know anybody to play Go with, because I mean, part of playing any game is have something to play with, right? Everybody who plays chess wants somebody to play with. They want company as much as they might. It's like every poet deep down wants love. Every player deep down wants company. They want someone to share space with, whether it's just parallel play or to share suffering. It's if you want to get philosophical, what is actually the difference? Yeah, it's just having a partner of some kind to not feel alone, which you could argue is probably a sublimation of sexual energy to feel safe. And I'm generally pretty happy in my own company. I usually prefer being on my own. I've just found most of the people I spend time with lack integrity, and they pick and choose which social battles to support instead of actually picking the principle to support. And to me, that just, from the marketing perspective, it feels very obvious that the social justice causes they support, one, are aligned with their own personal characteristics, attributes. And I get that. I'm obviously going to be quicker to defend France and Scotland than I am to defend, I'll pick a country. That's the thing, is then very specific there, I could have picked 2 other countries apart from France and Scotland, and there'll be a political connotation to it, whichever countries come first. And weirdly, the first ones that came to mind were Russia and South America. But I know South America is a continent, but I actually kind of like Russia. I think it gets a very bad reputation internationally because of the media industrial complex, which is in effect the propaganda arm of the military industrial complex. And I would think to some extent that social media is as well. If you're unaware, Facebook was a DARPA project. Siri was a DARPA project. And there's a few others of those. Like, the amount of military funding that goes into technological development with the media is much more significant. It's much higher than most people think it is. I guess this is kind of a soapbox so much as a study session. Study session? I've not slept as much as I should have this week. I had a very good night's sleep just before today, last night. I do need to improve that a bit. I've been working hard to try and adapt to 4 hours a night, 5 hours a night, and for a while it was doable. And I think that might have been because when I first was doing that, I'd been sleeping so well beforehand that the adjustment to it wasn't as difficult to adapt to. Whilst now, because I'm 3 years older, yeah. So now I'm 3 years older than I was when I first started doing 4 hours sleep. And in that time, I've been working monumentally harder than I was before. And don't get me wrong, I'm doing my best to work smarter as well, but I'm definitely studying, training, and working harder and smarter than I ever was. And I don't know, I got inspired by people that can actually do that, but apparently there's a genetic component, and if I don't have the genetic component, then I'll just have to accept it. However, there is something kind of fun about being sleep deprived. I have a working theory that it's actually an extension of my alcoholism, wanting to feel that kind of feeling and be a bit spaced out and be detached from reality because of wanting to painkiller. Oh, it was just good, wasn't it? Yeah, you were saying too. Yeah. Oh, that's just straight up mate because of the bishop. Ah, see, I was thinking if I brought this here from, sorry, if I brought that over there, then I'd have had that issue. Don't. That was the issue that I saw that I didn't think about because of this. However, we've seen it, studied it, we'll do it. So, interesting Hail Mary tactic. Although I think it would be the king can in that situation. Fair enough. If king captures, like, basically the only move that's going to do anything that is worthwhile. Then, bang! Again, viewers, I do apologise for the relatively short length of today's episode. However, I will tell you what, I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. So what I'm going to do is, with the greatest of intention, to record. Generally, I go for an hour. I think today's is maybe an hour, maybe half an hour, 40 minutes. Let's have a look at the clock. Oh, 23 minutes so far. Okay, so I need to eat dinner, and I also have to go to bed relatively early this evening. If you can't, you probably can't tell because looking at the screen, but it's 13 minutes past 9 p.m. Yeah. So next week, what I can do to make up to you is go for at least an hour 37, and that will balance out, and to compensate as a form of apology for it. And because I do kind of like doing these recordings, I'll see if I can hit a 2-hour mark. So thanks for watching. I do appreciate all your support. If you want to, like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things you want to do, you're more than welcome. Alright, thanks guys.